Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you listening right now. Thanks to all of you, including Paul Boyer, Kevin Morgan, Paul Thiessen, and brand new patron Jessica. Thank you, Jessica. Welcome. On this episode of DTNS, Bluesky is now big enough to have an AI controversy. Oh, they grow up so fast. OpenAI angers some artists who used to like it, and Sony loses a longtime PlayStation team star. This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. In Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
In Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
And I'm just going to get this out of the way right off the top of the show, because a lot of times we forget, and then people who aren't in the U.S. get freaked out. There's no Daily Tech News show Thursday or Friday this week. We have holidays. Two very important holidays in the U.S.
Thanksgiving, U.S.
Yeah. Well, Thanksgiving is the lesser of the two, but then Black Friday is a huge holiday.
I was like, what's the second one? Oh, right. Yeah. We have to eat tomorrow, and then we have to buy on Friday.
Burn calories shopping.
So, yeah, that's how you burn calories. Exactly.
That's right. It's the circle of life. So you'll get Daily Tech headlines in the feed. Don't worry about that. You'll get some news, and we'll be back with a full show on Monday. But we still have to do this show, so let's start with the quick hits.
Spotify is adding support for Gemini on Android, meaning that you can use natural language to ask your phone to find and play music. Gemini can connect to the Spotify app to find a song by title or artist or album or playlist name. It can also start playing songs meant for a particular activity, if you so desire. The feature is still rolling out, but once fully functional, it should work without needing to open up the Spotify app at all. Spotify is the second non-Google app after WhatsApp to get Gemini integration.
None of these voice-activated things ever get the band names I want them to play right. La Seraphim, Tuos, Islet. No, they don't. TikTok is now limiting which appearances effects users can access if they're younger than 18. They didn't list which ones, but we're talking about the beauty effects probably. TikTok also said it will increase how much information filters give users about what it will change about their appearance, so you know what you're getting into before you turn the filter on. TikTok is also testing using machine learning to detect if a user might be younger than 13 despite saying they aren't. When detected, the algorithm would send that account to a human moderator to review and confirm. That test will start in the UK.
Raspberry Pi launched the Compute Module 5. It's a single board computer with no ports, useful for people making embedded applications. TechCrunch notes that industrial and embedded companies make up 72% of Raspberry Pi's sales, at least as far as 2023. Compute Model 5 has a quad-core ARM Cortex A76 processor, support for two 4K displays with a 60 hertz refresh rate, gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and starts at $45.
OpenAI is letting its employees sell about $1.5 billion worth of shares to SoftBank. This is because SoftBank wants to increase its recent $6.6 billion funding round. And they needed some creative ways to do it because reasons in the financial world. SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son supposedly pushed for the move to increase SoftBank's stake. SoftBank has previously invested in Apple and Qualcomm and Alibaba. So a lot of people pay attention to what they invest in. And it currently has stakes not only in OpenAI, which it's had for a while, but Perplexity, as well as two other AI startups, Poolside and Glean.
A U.S. appeals court ruled that the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, exceeded its authority by sanctioning Tornado Cash's immutable smart contracts. The court says that these smart contracts can't be considered property under U.S. law and can't be blocked under sanctions either. The decision reverses a previous ruling and grants partial summary judgment to Tornado Cash users, enabling them to access the platform. 404 Media published an article Tuesday evening titled, "Somebody Made a Dataset of 1 Million Bluesky Posts for Machine Learning Research." That was the first post. A machine learning librarian working at Hugging Face, Daniel Van Strien, released a dataset composed of 1 million Bluesky posts complete with what They were posted, and who posted them, intended for machine learning research. Now, Van Strien initially said when sharing the data set, this data set contains 1 million public posts collected from Bluesky Social's Firehose API, intended for machine learning research and experimentation with social media data. Each post contains text content, metadata, and information about media attachments and reply relationships. Now, Van Strien has since removed the data set due to some backlash of people saying, you shouldn't have done this. Posting on Bluesky, quote, I've removed the Bluesky data from the repo. While I wanted to support tool development for the platform, I recognize this approach violates principles of transparency and consent in data collection. I apologize for this mistake. Okay, so I thought this would be a good jumping off point to talk about how we feel about scraping of data. Bluesky obviously has been in the news as of late because a lot of people have joined the network, trying to figure out if it's their new X or a supplement to that type thing. But scraping data is controversial. Scott, what do you think?
Well, I think that this is an interesting story because I think the natural inclination for a lot of people is to go, oh, here we go again, another platform, and this one happens to be having a moment of growth, is going to share your data. There's this sort of feeling, right, to jump on those things. And this is not what's happening here at all. Really, this is just a story about somebody who went to a public website that has public data, scraped that data, and is now using it for his research. And people are more going after that person than Bluesky. And Bluesky's response is sort of like, well, it's an honor system thing, and there's not a lot we can do. And I agree with them. Like, it's just the internet. There's stuff out there. You're going to go scrape it, and people are going to do it with or without your permission. We don't have laws to protect this, if there need to be any at all anyway. And it is just the way of it moving forward. So in this particular case, I don't want to just say it's a much ado about nothing, even though it kind of is in some respects. But I think it is good that it does continually bring up this discussion of, is how we want to do this? Are we okay with this? Open and free data for a long time was just a built-in part of the internet, and it was why it was so great, and we all embrace that. Well, now we have an open and free internet that can now be scraped and used for other things, sometimes things that you'll have no credit in the work that you did, that it got scraped or whatever it is. So there's questions now, right? We've changed. The conversation has been tweaked, and I think it's good to have it as often as we need to have it. But I think in this particular case, it's just illustrative of the idea that Bluesky, Twitter, nobody can really do anything about public data. And I don't think this guy had any ill intent. I think everybody's trying to do these studies right now. I'll bet you money there are other versions of this same data sitting on somebody's research drive, and they're just not telling us.
And which just wasn't noticed. I mean, of course. Right. I mean, the whole idea is social networks are a great way to understand human behavior. I mean, is it going to make the next large language model that's right for you? Mileage may vary. But that is something that researchers are very interested in doing. I don't know, some of the dissents from what Bluesky said, which was basically like, hey, as you said, Scott, honor system here. We can't, that is, if you do that, then that's on you. We're not going to shut down the whole network, just to make sure that bad actors don't have access to this information. And I think depending on who you are, you might think that's the right thing to do or not.
Mm-hmm. I don't think people really, let me rephrase this. There's a lot of people who are just against stuff because that's what you do. I'm against people collecting AI. I wonder what percentage of people in this data set really objected. Like if they were given the choice directly, really would have objected. Bluesky's promise is that this is an open system where your posts can be migrated from server to server, right? It's a Fediverse-like approach, just like Mastodon. This is not really scraping. Scraping is when you go and you get a website and you scrape the data off of it. This is using the API that is meant to be open for people to access posts and be able to do something. It's one of the foundations of Bluesky. So it's not just that Bluesky is like, well, it's the honor system, there's not much we can do. It's like, this is how the system was designed. The other thing Bluesky said was, we are looking into ways to let users express whether they give consent or not, so that someone who does want to play by the rules can say, oh, well, I'll only use the posts where someone has given consent to be trained on it. I also don't know what damage comes from your public Bluesky post being used in a machine learning training data, but that's probably a conversation for another day. But if you want to...
if I were like, I'm Sarah Lane and here's my address, and that like somehow ends
also, it's machine learning. It's not large language models. Usually people are like, well, you're gonna imitate me. This isn't a large language model. It's a machine learning situation. So it's entirely different. I don't know. I don't want to go on and on and on about this, but it's the same thing I've been saying, which is it's not illegal. And like Scott said very eloquently, if you want an open internet, you have to allow it to be open to be used. And I think Bluesky has the right idea, which is like, let's give people a way to say whether they consent or not, so that people who want to respect that can. But until we get a new law about whether public data is acceptable for use or what the rules around using it should be, you're going to have a lot of these kinds of situations.
Yeah. I don't even think this one is one that would prompt any of that. Nobody's going to go, all right, time to lay it all out on the table again.
Down. He's trying to play nice with people, and
this isn't like a turning point. I don't.
The most important part of this story is that Bluesky's big enough that people got mad.
Yeah, that's actually kind of the hidden headline, isn't it? Is that it's big enough that now we finally have an AI controversy around another platform that wasn't one of the big ones we were always complaining about. And that's interesting in its own little way. But yeah.
Speaking of big AI companies that people get mad at, on Tuesday, a group of artists who had been given early access to OpenAI's Sora video generator released a version of the tool publicly on Hugging Face. Hugging Face in another story. This version used their tokens, in other words, the artist's tokens, the artists who had been given private access, to give anyone access to Sora. They essentially published a front end that used their tokens. Their tool could only generate up to 10 seconds of video at 1080p, though supposedly Sora can generate up to 60 seconds. Along with the release, 19 artists wrote an open letter saying, and I quote, "We received access to Sora with the promise to be early testers, red teamers, and creative partners. However, we believe instead we are being lured into art washing to tell the world that Sora is a useful tool for artists. We are not your free bug testers, PR puppets, training data, or validation tokens." The artist also accused OpenAI of using them as unpaid labor, pointing out that the only compensation anybody would get was that a few of the testers would have their creations screened publicly. They added, "We are not against the use of AI technology as a tool for the arts. If we were, we probably wouldn't have been invited to this program. We are sharing this to the world in the hopes that OpenAI becomes more open, more artist-friendly, and supports the arts beyond PR stunts." OpenAI responded by saying, look, this is still in development. It's a limited number of artists, but they have free access. We don't tell them what they can do or even if they have to do anything. They suspended all access to Sora temporarily while they figured out how to, shut down this public one, and claimed that only a few of the artists who signed this open letter were actually part of its early access program. But Scott, you're an artist. I'm curious what sense you get from this, as these are people who are like, we like AI. This isn't an anti-AI activist move. We're just mad at the way OpenAI is treating us.
Well, it's a tier of this AI artist thing that I hadn't considered very, very much. And that is this kind of middle group where, on the one hand, you have an extreme group over here, which I sometimes tip my toe in, which is, man, this stuff stinks. Please stop doing it. This is bad for the future. It's bad for artists, all that sort of stuff. And then there's this other extreme where AI is the future and this is all we're going to use and forget about anything else. This is the new and everything else is old. In the middle there, though, there are some pretty reasonable, more centrist thinking folks who know that some of this technology not only is here to stay, but actually could be really beneficial. Like they say in their own quote, beneficial to the arts, good tools for the arts. It's a tricky thing to navigate because it's not simple. It's not just, well, this one thing is okay and this other thing's okay. Sometimes it's, Sora as a product may have lots of good points, bad points, and middle points. And that's, I think, kind of their point. I think that this is a group I trust their voices more than I would the other extremes. The either pro or way too anti. The ones in the middle are the ones that are kind of putting rubber to the road. They were also invited to this, or at least some of them, according to OpenAI. And I want to hear, this is kind of what I do want to hear in these processes. Not just that, well, we had some artists sign an NDA and they all fiddled with the thing. And on the other end of this, you'll get to hear whether they liked it or not, and they'll either promote it or they won't or whatever. I like that they're speaking up now if they have concerns. Because if they have concerns, I'm way more interested in them having them than I am either of the other two extremes. So I see this as a good thing. And I think that OpenAI's response is very corporate, but not in the spirit at which we're trying to get all this in right now.
Yeah, it feels like these artists are saying, you just want to hear positive things from us. And we were trying to tell you it didn't work very well.
That's what the PR puppet part of this sounded like to me, because it's sort of like if you have access to a tool that isn't available to anybody else, which we all do from time to time. It's like, yeah, I am your bug tester. I am contributing to your training data. I mean, that's sort of the part of being in a beta testing system. But I don't feel like being part of a PR machine is any handshake agreement that I ever have to have. I'm not exactly sure what the artists thought that they needed to agree to, or if there was some sort of a shakedown going on. I don't know. But that's the part where it's like, yeah, if this group really felt that way, then that would be something that you would push back on.
Mm-hmm. It feels like they don't feel respected because they're saying we don't have a problem with AI. We might have, some helpful things to say about whether this tool is useful or not, but they're not listening to us.
Yeah, I think that there's a general feeling among artists when it comes to that side of what OpenAI is doing, because their stuff is so multifaceted. And a lot of these companies are that now. It's not just, hey, we make images, these guys make videos, and we're over here doing LLMs. Everybody's doing kind of everything, and they're trying to cater to this stuff. And part of that is they want to do tools that require some form of, hey, the community of artists, creators, filmmakers, whatever, they're with us on this. And so it does feel a little PR stunty if they're not actually taking feedback, if it's just being administered like a PR move. And even if it isn't, even if OpenAI's intentions are pure in every possible way, this is the area I just think that needs the most work in AI stuff is the artists and the engineers. Like,
if you can't get the artists who like you, who wanted to participate on your side, there's a problem. Even if it's not the majority of them, there's a problem.
Yeah. So that's something I think they can find some common ground on this. But again, this illustrates we are at a junction point on some of this stuff, and it's interesting to see the pushback.
Well, if you have a thought about something we talk about on the show, but you're not an AI who has access to our email address, well, humans, here it is. feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com.
Now I'm wondering how many AI robots have sent us emails, and we just don't know it.
We don't know. We have no idea.
Well, we don't know. Sometimes you can kind of tell. All right. So very, very different subject. Key player in the development of Sony's PlayStation game console, Shuhei Yoshida, is stepping down after 38 years with the company. Yoshida was one of the original members of the PlayStation project back in 1993. He also spearheaded the division's licensing program and in turn became a producer for major game titles like Gran Turismo. In 2000, he became VP of Sony Computer Entertainment America, followed by a role as Senior Vice President of SCE Worldwide Studios USA in 2007. Finally, in 2008, he became the president of SCE Worldwide Studios. So Yoshida has been around the block. Scott Johnson, what do the gamers make of this?
Well, I'm a huge fan of this man and his legacy. I think that it is notable to say that, and I think accurate to say that Sony's current position in the worldwide electronics marketplace is directly affected by decisions that he and his team members made to make them a premier brand in gaming at a time where there was a real pivot happening between 2D, 3D, all this sort of stuff. And their deal they had with Nintendo, which looked like a pretty good partnership for a long time, he was also involved in that. I think them recognizing that, man, do we really just want to like hook our wagon to this wagon and just be part of another person's wagon? Or do we want to be our own freaking video game wagon? And they chose the latter. And it ruffled a lot of feathers. Like Nintendo, I don't think ever forgave them for it. But it created one of the most recognizable brands in the history of gaming. Tom mentioned earlier, we just got final word. We've been saying this for decades, but final word that the PlayStation 2 is the largest selling or the most selling console in the history of consoles. 160 million consoles worldwide. Nobody's quite done that. We had thought this was true, but I guess Sony finally confirmed it. And that's just part of his legacy. His approachableness. This guy's willing to go on anybody's podcast, talk anything they want to talk about. Always very open, always extremely friendly. He seemed like somebody who was connecting to the audience and not just a corporate C-suite executive who keeps far away from everybody else. That impression was always there during those 38 years. And while Sony has certainly had its ups and downs and its bumps here and there, for the most part, I think his leadership and leadership like it within the company has kept them in a really great place. They are at a bit of a crossroads now, and a lot of people talk about this. What's Sony's future look like? What is the future of hardware and physical media and all these kind of questions, game preservation? These are all questions that will haunt Sony as much as any other company trying to navigate this particular part of the industry's timescale. But he is without a doubt one of the most influential characters in the history of gaming, and he'll probably be heavily missed there. I mean, I think in recent years it was not a lot of hands-on directly, but there are a lot of times during the history of this company, including PlayStation 1's launch, PlayStation 2's pivotal launch, 3 and the problems they had, and then crawling back to a leadership position in the face of Microsoft, this multi-billion nightmare company trying to come steal some of their ground. I think you got to give it to him for navigating a lot of that stuff. So, on one hand, I'm a little sad because it's just like old guard going away, but also, geez, well done. You entered the company in your 20s and you're 60.
The PlayStation is 30 years old. He's been on the team for 31 years. I mean, that's...
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
He's been with the company since '86, so he's even got his feet wet with whatever the heck they were working on prior to this. And knowing that he was there before PlayStation became a thing and was responsible for what was happening with the Nintendo PlayStation, which Sony was building for Nintendo and then scrapped. Like what a wide range of being there for it, right? Like that's just insane. But I think he deserves the break, and I hope that Gorilla's former CEO, I forgot his name, he'll be taking over. And they're very capable also, so I have a feeling that'll be a good piece of leadership.
Not Gorilla Glass remaining either.
No, Gorilla like the people that make the Horizon Zero Dawn games.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a dude we're gonna think pretty fondly on. And there's people like this in almost all of these cases. We think this way about. Certainly about Miyamoto over at Nintendo and people at Xbox, some of its founders and that sort of thing. But this is Sony's version of that. And even though Sony doesn't play, they don't play much in the celebrity game as much as other game companies do. It's still hard not to recognize him for his contribution.
A lot of people were mentioning the video that he did shortly after Microsoft's horrible 2013 announcement. And that is probably my favorite memory of him. It's the thing that I know most about him. It was, if anybody doesn't recall, Microsoft had an announcement where they talked about being able to share your digital games, and it was considered to be a very complex thing of like you only have 3 shares and you have to be on the same network when you authorize them, blah 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 blah. And Yoshida did a video where he's like, here's how you share a Sony PlayStation game. And then there's like 10 seconds of step 1. And then it comes back to him and he hands it to another guy who goes, thanks. And that's it. That's
they just smile, and that's the end of it. Yeah, they really took advantage of that. Microsoft dropped the ball. They picked up the ball and did really well that generation. They're being asked similar questions now because the landscape has changed.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, Microsoft was right about a bunch of this. They just did it wrong and did it in the wrong timing. So we'll see how they navigate it moving forward. But you can't. One other piece of this I didn't mention. You can't deny the effect this guy had on one aspect of gaming, and that is third-party relationships. They existed under Nintendo, but they were stringent and hard and difficult to navigate. If you were a third-party dev, not under the direct umbrella of Nintendo, it was a pain. Sony made that way easier and still had high-quality standards and just made it so third parties were as crucial to a console success as anything under the hood. So, props to him for that as well.
Yeah. All right, let's finish out strong with the mailbag.
Ryan had some thoughts on our GDI conversation yesterday about the 7.4 terabytes of mobile data on the Rogers 5G service used by people at Taylor Swift show in Toronto's Rogers Centre. Ryan says it's quite probable that Rogers owns the DAS, or distributed antenna system, in the Rogers Centre. All major venues and entertainment complexes use dedicated mobile network designs to maintain service quality during events. Most are independently operated. The one in the Minnesota State Fair is run by MP/Next Level, but others may be carrier-owned or operated. It's possible that Rogers was reporting the entire data usage in the stadium.
It's a good point. We were speculating on whether there was more than 7.4 terabytes, considering that there are other carriers besides Rogers. But Ryan may be right that the 7.4 terabytes may be all the data because Rogers was running the DAS. So thanks for that, Ryan. Good point.
Indeed. And thanks to you, Scott Johnson, as always, the day before Turkey Day. Where can we find your latest?
Well, there's a lot of good stuff happening at frogpants.com. Because of the holiday, things are a little bit goofy in terms of when things dropped. But I want to mention a monthly show that I do with Greg Street. If that name's familiar, he used to be a very big shot, an important fellow at Blizzard Entertainment for much of the formative years of World of Warcraft's development. He is now... since then went to Riot and then left Riot and now works for his own company that he founded called Fantastic Pixel Castle. Anyway, he and I work together on a monthly podcast called Word on the Street, hence his last name, Street. And we talk about what they're doing. Basically, it is an attempt to do something very different in the games business, be transparent from day one about everything that happens in developing an MMO in 2024. And I'm finding it, even as the host who knows a lot of this stuff, absolutely fascinating. I think you'll enjoy it too. So if you haven't checked that out, go to frogpants.com/street or look for Word on the Street wherever you get your shows.
Now listen, I know Singles Day is the biggest shopping day of the year, and it already happened on November 11th. But Black Friday's no slouch, and we are located in the United States. So USA, patriotism, we're doing a sale at the DTNS store, 25% off your order if you use the code RAM at checkout, because it's easy to remember. And it's something we all want more of. RAM, RAM, 25% off your order. And Scott, thank you for making that soda can glass art for us. We wanted to make that glass that's in the shape of a soda can look kind of old-timey and fun, and you killed it, man. That was awesome.
I had a blast making that. I suspect we'll have some more cool stuff from me in collaboration on that store as well. But yeah, right. Those are really cool. Like they look like a can, like a soda can, but they're glass. I don't know when that happened as a thing that humans made
now, yeah.
But it's rad. I super like it. So
you can even buy it. You can buy it just as the glass, or you can get it with the wooden top and a straw, so that you're drinking it like a soda can too. But yeah, that art you did just makes me crave sarsaparilla.
That was the idea. I was going old school 40s Tom, which is always a thing I think about with Tom. So.
I mean, Isn't he still 40s Tom?
No, he's out. That decade, he belonged in the 1940s. I mean, I don't want him to be there because then we wouldn't have him. But I mean, could we go back in time? We will find Tom Merritt walking around in a fedora drinking one of these.
Drinking a sarsaparilla and talking about, I don't know, the atom bomb.
Anyway, it's dailytechnewsshow.com/store and use the code RAM to get 25% off your order. Patrons, stick around for the extended show. If you're a patron, you get more show. Good Day Internet. We're going to talk about how more than half of English language LinkedIn posts show signs of being AI generated. And is that a bad thing? We'll discuss.
You can catch our show live Monday through Friday. We're live at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's 2100 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We are off for the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday, but we'll be back on Monday with bellies full of turkey with Allison Sheridan joining us. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.